Greetings, everybody. This is Christopher Messina coming at you from the Messy Time Studios at another beautiful day in Florida. It is the 16th of November, 2022, and I'm joined by my friend and colleague just down the coast, Kurt Wuckert Jr. How you doing?
Fantastic, Christopher. Thanks for having me back.
You bet. Minor things happening. So I hear Sam Bankman-Fried, some chubby twerp with a bizarre voice, has apparently gone and lost $32 billion or something. Have you heard about that?
Yeah. Unfortunately, yeah, I had some other stuff I wanted to work on this week, but let's do wall to wall FTX nonsense. So, and funny you mentioned his voice. He talks a lot like Vitalik Buterin,
Oh,
and funny, Vitalik came out today on Twitter and basically wanted to remind everybody not to throw the baby out with the bathwater, because what about all the good stuff Sam did?
like what? Giving
So
$45 million to Democrats to steal the recent election?
kinda, it seemed like that's where he. So it was like it came across as a little bit like, hey guys, but he's a vegan. And so I don't know. Vitalik's a weird cookie himself.
Right.
So yeah,
Wow.
I don't know. The whole thing, the whole thing stinks. Everything about it makes me feel like this is a smoke show and there's something going on.
Something even worse than just losing all this money. Right.
It's starting to look that way, given the connections. Like you said, he's a massive Democratic Party donor, literally number two, only outspent by George Soros.
Right.
So go ahead and call Sean Hannity and everybody else and let them know. But it's I don't know what's the next shoe to drop.
Yeah, well, for those who haven't paid attention have just heard about this, right? What I found so startling was, you know, call me an old-fashioned, old-school capital markets guy, right? But there are reasons for basic guidelines, right? So kind of a lot of the regulatory stuff that was created after the shenanigans of the 1920s was to prevent market insiders abusing mom and pop retail investors, right? I mean, that's what it was all
Mhm.
about. That's why the SEC was created. Now, do regulators overreach on occasion because they like to feel important? Yeah, they do. But in general, I mean, the fact that all these people poured all this money into these unregulated platforms just because someone slapped the word exchange on it
Yeah.
is beyond insanity. And I know folks have been bitten by it, right? And I
Mhm.
don't consider them stupid. And they all kind of went along with, well, it's so big, like there should be some comfort there. But like I just go back to Reagan's trust but verify, right? I remember during Madoff, a lot of the press who doesn't understand how Wall Street works would say things after Madoff was caught, like, well, why didn't you say something? Well, why didn't I say anything? Because the one guy who did, well, Madoff was the chairman of NASDAQ, was like hounded and sued into oblivion for being a
Yeah.
whistleblower because he
Mhm.
sent statistical proof to an SEC that had no mathematically competent people, only lawyers. And so why are you going to put your neck out? I mean, we had one client, never forget this, one of my partners was the head of structured products at a big bank at the time. I'm
Mhm.
not going to dive into that mess as which bank. But one of the eager beaver salesmen had met Bernie at some party or in the Hamptons over the weekend, came back and said, wow, I mean, he's gonna let us put $1 billion into his fund. Lucky us.
Oh,
Right. So eager
what an
salesman,
opportunity.
yeah, hands this to my partner, who became my partner at the time. He's this kind of very solid. He grew up in the exchanges of Chicago. He has seen every lie and fraud possible. So he says to the salesman, that's great. I'm going to go talk to Bernie. We'll have a chat about this money he wants to give us. And the salesman's like, yeah, when are we going? He's like, no, coach, you have a seat. Relax. It's your credit. You get, it's going to be your deal. I'm not taking anything. I'm management. It's yours. I'm going to go. Long and short of it is, he walks into Bernie's offices on Third Avenue, and the first thing he notices is it looks like a bucket shop. Privileged address, right? Card tables and mismatched phones.
Oof.
Like every time they hire someone new, they send him out to buy a new phone for himself. Like none of
Ooh,
them
I'm
match.
out.
Okay,
Yep.
that's a red flag for the
Yep.
chairman of NASDAQ running this multi-billion-dollar fund that churns out 13%. Okay, but he knows
Yeah.
it. Goes and sits with Bernie and Bernie's brother-in-law, the accountant who's the auditor out of like the Rockland County Mall. And he looks at these, my buddy looks at Bernie and says, before we get started, I work for a very large multinational bank. No matter what I think, or no matter what the eager salesman you met thinks, there are just a couple of things. We'd love to do business with you. But if we're going to give you our clients' money, we require first an independent audit done of your funding your firm. And Bernie says, oh, no, that's fine. We do our own auditing. And he's like,
Yeah, no, all good.
And we require that you at least give a look to our execution brokers as a competitive presence. If your brokers are better, we don't, but we at least ask that you look to see if you'll use our execution desk so we can generate transaction revenue. And lastly, and this one's non-fucking negotiable, you are going to custody all of our assets at our custodial bank.
Sure.
And Bernie says, oh, no, that's okay. We self-custody. So my buddy starts again. Let me reiterate. And Bernie stands up and says, thank you for coming in, and puts his hand out. Right. So right there, he walked out the door. Right. So the fact is that anyone that did basic due diligence never gave this lying fraud a penny, which brings me to squeaky voice weirdo dressing like a 4-year-old making mud pies.
Right. Stained.
Who gave him money? How
Everybody.
could he withstand 9 seconds of questioning? It's amazing.
It is. I mean, it's terrifying, and I think this has been the real problem in the blockchain economy. So, I mean, you've covered a whole bunch of stuff like regulation opportunity. Like, I can already see it. There's going to be House committee meetings and the whole thing.
Finally, there should be.
Well, here's my problem. It's already illegal to steal from people. It's illegal to steal from people whose money you're custodying. Yeah. I don't know that we need new laws. I think we need to enforce this.
Actually, this is a good point. This is a really good point, because a lot of people are going to say that very smart thing. Regulation is not about post hoc legal remedy for crimes committed. Regulation is things like the exchange and the clearinghouse have to send their end-of-day ledgers to the regulator every day, and the regulator can pop in unannounced and shove everyone out the door and look at the books live. That's what regulation means. It's designed to forestall this in the first place. Regulation would have found out that he's taking $2 billion of customer money and giving it to his methamphetamine freak polyamorous girlfriend who looks 12 to quote unquote trade. Right? That you couldn't do that under a regulated system.
Right. Well, yeah. So I mean, you look at this situation, and I think in the space, and so the reason I bring up the gray area of regulation is that people think that blockchain is a new thing, both from a legal standpoint, and yes, there are new things about it, but it really is it's, what is it, old wine in new skins, or something like
bottles, right?
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. And so it's, you know, like there's not a lot new here, but you get these people who use new terms, like even the term blockchain. It's like, it's just a forward only database. It's a database. So if there are database laws apply to a blockchain.
Right.
But you get these people who use new jargon and, oh, we're experts, and I'm a game theory expert, and this is really cutting edge stuff. And so then you create this weird interference defense layer on things where Sequoia Capital, for example, is now a creditor of this giant bankruptcy.
Which, having dealt with Sequoia, kind of makes me happy.
So does every other person who's dealt with Sequoia, I'm coming to learn.
That doesn't make me sad at all.
But here's the thing. Could Sequoia have afforded to do some due diligence?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, obviously.
Basic.
So
like,
what?
Are you a stoned loser? Will you take a drug test?
So what happened? Where did that break down? And we'll find out in 3 years in some report. But the interesting thing is that what probably happened, and this is based on some experience I have in other places. I have no inside knowledge about what happened at FTX, but what probably happened is they found somebody on Reddit who was in the Bitcoin space for 10 years. And I'm one of these people. I'm like a 10-year Bitcoin guy, and people seek me for expertise. And it's
you
like
converted me to a big blocker. I mean, it just took you 20 minutes. So you're a
there you go.
guy.
But here's the thing: if I was the bad guy, if I was some kind of predator asking for your money, and hey, Christopher, you look a little old to be able to make this decision for yourself, but and I start throwing jargon at you, right? And it probably wouldn't work against you because of your experience, but it would work on a lot of people that don't have this sort of experience in the space. And you blow smoke up their ass, and then at the end of it, you say, hey, man, what's $5 million to you if I can turn it into all of this? Exactly. And so they just got fleeced. And the thing is all you got to do is get one big name. If you can get one guy, then you start to put that on your website and your pitch deck. And once you say, hey, well, Sequoia's got their money with it, and so does the nation of El Salvador, and so does all the, hey, we're the official people that are doing the Ukraine thing for the UN and all this crap. Yeah, it's all of a sudden it's the due diligence is done by the crowd, presumably, and it's like, I don't know, give it to Sam. Everybody else is.
Yeah.
And
well, I've seen it in the real world where, and again, I won't mention names because it's a small community and they have friends with baseball bats, but there were a couple of spectacular hedge fund collapses during the course of my career. So if anyone wants to go do that age range and figure out who it is, go ahead. But in two of them, at least, some of the limited partners, for those people who are unaware, like a general partner is the one that runs the fund, like John Paulson. Again, his fund is fine. I'm not talking about him. And limited partners, the people that invest their money with him. In return, he keeps 20% of their profits and charges a management fee. So the idea being that man or that woman will manage your money better than you will. So that's the way you do it. Fine. Okay. And when that works, it's fine. It's a perfectly great relationship. But two of them that collapsed, huge names had invested. And this is the trick. And this is why I'm often unpopular and why I often have screaming fights with colleagues, because I refuse to let reputation be a proxy for due diligence. Right. And so in this instance, there were two that had taken a couple of $1 billion, and they all basically piggybacked on the due diligence the first bank should have done. But all you have to do is convince one, right? And so they convinced the one bank with a big name, and they did it. It later turned out because the guy raising the money was a college frat brother of the guy at the bank. And so, and the problem was for the first 7 years, everything went fine. So, but the problem was now that the standard has been set that, oh my God, this big bank did it. They gave them $100 million bucks. Clearly, they know what they're doing, and then no one bothered to check, and that's just sloppy, right? And so that happened here, exactly the same thing, but madness, just mad. I just have to say this, and I know that this is potentially rude, and the whole, it's not his voice, which is annoying enough, but that's okay. You're allowed to have an annoying voice, right? It's fine.
Yeah.
The whole shtick of the chubby vegan wearing dirty socks, driving the Corolla, living with 10 co-lovers, co-methamphetamine freaks in a tax haven.
Yeah.
Like that alone, a real investor would be like, I'm good. No, thank you.
Well, yeah, it's just nonsense. Because first of all, he drives the Toyota Corolla, but that's ignoring his, I don't know, $40-50 million mega mansion in the Bahamas. And
exactly, that's his offices, man. It's not really his. It's like people are there, man.
Oh, that's the corporations. That's for the
me.
group.
I'm not about things.
Well, and so exactly that. I mentioned on a number of things. He's from two very powerful families. If you ever meet a guy who suddenly becomes a billionaire and he has a hyphenated last name, you need to look into, okay, why were both of those family names so valuable that they needed to be kept?
And so, to keep both, exactly.
Right. So it's the same thing. There's a reason.
An ACLU lawyer in the Bay Area who wants to honor the mother goddess, right?
Exactly. Hillary Rodham Clinton wants you to know exactly who the Rodhams are and where she comes from, and it's exactly that kind of thing. And so Sam can play normal guy who can't afford laundry detergent all he wants, but the fact of the matter is he has blood relatives that have testified in front of Congress and stood in the most valuable investment offices in the world for 50 years.
Right.
And so, to play this game and to pretend you're one thing, this is actually really common. There's a lot of this kind of,
of course there is. Oh, it's never ending. What I loved is when Zuckerberg, they first made such a fortune out in the Valley, and he wore a hoodie, right?
Right.
Well, of course, what I loved was all the French fashion houses that were suddenly making $6,000 cashmere hoodies. Like, it's all the same pretentious crap, right? There's a uniform that you wear, and God bless, in some senses, Sam pulling this shtick off. I'm just a guy, Look, I want to see the world. I mean, that video that he did with that.
Oh, it's nauseating, especially in the context of now.
But fabulous.
Yeah.
But
well, he's the kind of guy who could have organized that anyway. Outside of FTX, he could have said, you know what, I'll be the head of a charity organization, and he could have gotten that figured out. He has the connections, he has the money, and all of that. So
But people are going to beat the hell out of FTX for a while. My last thought about it itself is it going to go down in the history books as Teapot Dome did for Warren Harding, right? Because there is intricate. All that $40 million went to Democrats. Not a penny went to Republicans. So first off, whether it went to Republicans or not, much like Bernie Madoff, as the prosecutions began, they went back to the people who had just gotten money out. And like, that's not yours. You were happy to be lucky enough to cut a check before it collapsed. You're giving that back, which is going to be a lot of fun for politicians who took the money and spent it on this election cycle, because they're going to have to come up with the cash to give back.
That is an interesting point, actually. Some of these coffers probably have a little bit of extra in there.
And you're going to kick that. That was never yours to spend. And the beauty is, now that we have amazingly squeaked through with 218 Republicans in the House, is that the Democrats are crying, because at 217 they could have let this go away, and at 218 the Republicans are because either you're going to have to pay it back publicly, or you're going to be hounded as to why you're not paying back this stolen money. Well, and they're going to find the 74-year-old grandmother that put her life savings in because Sam's girlfriend told her to. And she's going to be on the front page of every newspaper for the next year. So it's going to be awesome theater to watch.
It is.
It's going to be the counterpoint to January 6th, the musical. So it's going to be, aside from that point, is this finally the end? I mean, is this catch a falling knife for cryptocurrencies where they're fundamentally worth zero and the world is finally realizing that?
It's certainly going to be a consolidation. I think in the washout, there's a couple of exchanges that are probably legit, probably actually have customer funds and that kind of thing. The ones that stand out now as probably in that situation, Bittrex and Gemini. Gemini is New York regulated.
Right.
They are actually BitLaw. They're probably the only exchange on earth, other than probably Coinbase, that has a regulator come audit their books on the regular and that kind of thing. So they'll likely squeak out of it because they're not doing. However, they did shut off their lending product the last 24 hours, but I think that was a very tangential side business for them, as opposed to the reason to exist for most of these other entities. So I think going from 30-ish bucket shops around the world and down to maybe 3 regulated exchanges globally, maybe they go legit. Maybe it's a good thing. Maybe the 20,000 garbage tokens that are traded around the world all kind of pilfer out, and people realize, okay, if we're not going to do real business here, then what's the point? So I would love to see a washout of everything top to bottom, BTC, Ethereum, and the rest of them, because frankly, these are the advisors on these things. This is BlockFi and Celsius, and all these things are they're connected all the way to the head of the dragon, frankly. So I'd love to see it get it lopped off, but the pragmatist in me says, no, there's a few guys that are going to make it out of this and end up shaking hands and making this work going forward.
Right.
And
you've got an exchange platform, right? I mean, we've chatted about this before, that there are real interesting opportunities to use kind of blockchain wrappers and NFT structures and all that for real business. I mean, it's just a database. We used to laugh years ago. Remember that old scene in The Graduate where the pal of Dustin Hoffman's character's father walks up to him and says, "I got one word for you: plastics. We'll talk." Right? And we've been making that joke for a decade now. I got one word for you:
Yeah.
Bitcoin.
Right.
So there's a lot of fundamental value and utility in actual, Bitcoin as Satoshi laid out, and that's a functional utility thing. We're not going to get confused by that. But in terms of the actual trading, like to have a market, you got to have someone take the bullish side of a trade. Yeah. I don't see who's taking the bullish side of trying to catch Bitcoin as it drops.
100x leverage on exchange tokens with Tether and all of that. That's what I'd really like to see. The people that deserve to go down the hardest are the Tether people, because they're the shadow banking entity. They are everything wrong with the Federal Reserve System and all of that, and then run out of hotels in the Bahamas, right? And so
not even in DC, you can't go get them.
Right. And and I think it's curious that Paulo Ardonio, he's got some C-level position over at Tether. The moment this happened, flew to the Bahamas, allegedly met with Sam, and then flew directly to El Salvador, which is the only sovereign nation using BTC as legal tender, which implies there's some other relationship probably going on there that he's trying to calm down.
If they just want to tell us that BTC is backed by cocaine, then tell us. Right now, you've got a benchmark. Is it one BTC to 2 pounds? Like what's the ratio?
I do like commodity currencies.
Like commodity currency. Like tell me what it is. Then it's a matter of I'd like to see the Fed. I'd like to see the regulators and the DOJ wrestle with that. Right. Well, they're not actually selling you cocaine. They're just telling you that if you get to a jurisdiction that doesn't criminalize cocaine, you can turn each token into 2 kilos. Would they allow you to trade that? I don't know. It's a good question.
Redemptions are tricky.
Would the CME still have contracts on that? Very curious question.
Yeah. So luckily, Chicago doesn't do any illicit cocaine trade on.
No. Not that the floors are closed. No, it's really hard.
Yeah.
I got nothing more that I think a lot of people have said. I'm just it's a good warning sign, but it's also why that this sort of I had this guy on Bob Steven the other day. He calls himself Satoshi Nakaloko, right?
Yeah.
Funny. And he wrote this book, which he sent me a copy of. I cried with laughter, and it printed like 6 months ago, and it was the fundamental value of Bitcoin. And it's like 120 pages, and each page is a different language word for zero. Right? Like, I love the fact that he took the effort to print it. Absolutely fabulous.
That's pretty hardcore.
It's really good, but you got to give him credit. Like, this scam worked for a really long time. I think this is kind of the end of it. I don't see how
it's the end of an era for sure.
Yeah.
There's these lending programs and exchange tokens and 15% interest, and hey man, you get weekly payouts and all that. Like that's I think we're done there.
They throw new lingo at you. It's staking. No, it's called lending. We already have a word for it. It's called lending.
Yeah.
When you put it that way, people are like, what do you mean 15% a week? That sounds like, do you send people to break knees? Like, that's loan shark territory. What are you talking about?
Well, the infuriating thing is I thought this was over in 2017. So the 2017, there was USI Tech and there was BitConnect, which was itself has become one of the great memes.
Right.
And so the fact that it started to come back, that BlockFi and Celsius, and I actually interviewed Alex Mashinsky, I think it was in 2018, around the start of Celsius. And I asked him the same thing. I was like, how does this work? How could this even conceivably work?
Another pool of pigeons? I mean, clients?
You're right. Well, and my theory, and it's pretty obvious that this is how it works, is if you can print a token out of nothing, if it takes you 20 minutes to print money and people you give it liquidity, then that becomes really easy during a bull market. And admittedly, I talked about this to a couple of people who are, hey, should I get into one? Like, should I get into any of these things? And I always tell everybody, like, if you're probably gonna do it anyways, because I can see the look on your face.
You look all excited.
Right.
You're about to hit send.
Yeah. And I told him, like, look, man, invest your beer money, not your rent money, first of all,
Right.
and get out before everybody else does. Like when it starts feeling like, wow, I started to make a lot of money,
Get out.
please be the first one out the door.
Yeah. Oh,
So,
exactly. Well,
but that's the hard
like
part.
the old adage on Wall Street with the big firms, right? If the market's been really great and there are layoffs coming, right? Because the market's about to turn, the best favor you can do as the head of a department is fire your friends first, because they're the first ones out the door with their CVs to get a new job.
Sure. Yeah.
It's the same thing, right?
Yeah.
By the time the third round happens, like, your job is, you want fries with that?
Right. Well, and that's the hard part. I get a lot of DMs from people in the crypto space. Kurt, man, what happened? I thought I could trust X. And and I tell people, like, do you read my articles? I mean, I guess you follow me on Twitter, but all I do is criticize this stuff. It's so bad, to the point where, the thing with Celsius is that's like, okay, look, you keep asking me, you want to put your money in something, and I'm keep recommending you don't put your money in anything, but like, what do you do with these people? It's such a weird influencer responsibility thing, especially now. It looks like guys like Shaquille O'Neal and Tom Brady and some of these other people are going to end up going down with FTX because of some of this.
And
our friend Larry David might.
Let's raise a toast to Giselle for having a prenup.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, well done.
Oh, it's incredible.
He's about to be a lot poorer than he's been in the last decade.
Oh man,
I don't wish him ill. I mean, a lot of very smart people thought this made sense in some way.
Sure.
So sure. I'm not mocking anyone personally. I think it's a bummer for those who.
Yeah.
Of course, he's a smart guy. He's a football player. He's surrounded by smart money managers. Absolutely. Did they let him go all in on this? Absolutely not. So I'm sure he's
probably not.
It's gonna suck.
I've heard
out of my house.
$600 million or something of Tom Brady's money might be locked up or screwed up in this mess.
I don't know. That sounds high.
It sounds ridiculous.
That sounds
I agree.
Plausibly high. I'm not counting anyone's money. I'm just thinking about my one. You know what? I'm coming out of the closet. I read the New York Post, and I'm proud of it.
All right.
I'm tired of hiding in the shadows. It's New York Post, and I'm proud. So I couldn't resist. I'm whipping through clickbait, and I just caught something about their divorce, and I don't think there's that much assets between them. So I don't think it's true. But anyway, it's a lot. Whatever it is.
Yeah, it's
and that number may be that he got in when Bitcoin was 20 grand. And it floated up.
Wrote it up. Yeah.
Right. So that's the number that it sounds more dramatic to use that number, but
sure.
Whatever it is, it sucks.
Yeah.
And it's an embarrassment to be the face of a chubby loser that stole everyone's money and did drugs with it.
Well, and I mean, even his ads are him calling his old friends from the neighborhood to get them into FTX. And at the very, like, Larry David, to his credit,
was priceless. That was one of the best things I've ever seen. That Super Bowl campaign with Larry David was magic.
Brilliant. And when they're all in front of Congress, he can say, look, I told him don't do it. I don't like it.
I told you don't do it. This railroad thing will never take off. It's nonsense.
Right. I'm never wrong about these things.
I told you. No one listen. Well, I mean, there's pain happening for those who trust in a platform, and I give the chubby little fraudster some props. I mean, whether someone else used him as a front or whatever happened, he did manage to get people like Sequoia to give him huge amounts of money.
He sure did.
Which also kind of speaks to the weird culture of the Valley. They are lemmings. I mean, having dealt with them, the hardest thing you can get is the first penny. Once you have it, they're all like, "Wait, am I missing something?" I mean, they're like meerkats in the desert. So
that's funny.
I mean, literally, and very briefly, I left Wall Street at the end of '99 after the firm I was in went public, and big consulting firm hired me to come out to the Valley. Never forget this. So I fly to Silicon Valley. and for whatever reason, New Yorker, right? So their offices are on Sand Hill Road in Palo Alto, and I land at San Jose Airport, and I think I'm going to get a cab. I'm a New Yorker, so cab. Right, so now I got to rent a car. Thank God I have a license, right? But then it takes me 2 hours to get a car, and I finally get there. And because I'm late, I come rushing in, and the partner I'm meeting is like, "Oh my God, I'm glad you're here. Rush in." And I sit down. I intro to Silicon Valley. There are 3 VC partners from other firms there who've hired the firm I'm working for to advise them. And then there are a bunch of the consultants sitting around with yellow pads and pencils and paper and all that shit. And they plot me down right in front of these. And again, they look, I'm imagining them having hoodies on, but that's probably a reconstruction, right? 2 like 21-year-olds from Stanford who've got this this I don't remember, not misremembering, 8-page PowerPoint deck. And they're passing it around. And I'm flipping through it, and they're just giving their spiel. And I really think the last page is like a unicorn jumping over a rainbow into a pile of gold, right?
Oh, come on.
And the idea is they're going to create this brilliant new tool that Wall Street needs, okay? So I look at this thing, and I'm like, I'm trying to buy time because it makes no sense. And everyone's nodding like, this is great. And I'm like, am I in a cult? And I asked the kids, I'm like, okay, have either of you worked on Wall Street? No. Do you know anyone who works on Wall Street? No. Did you call anyone who works on Wall Street to ask them about your thesis? Because in the Valley in those days, the template was simple. Here's the problem. Here's how I'm solving it, right? So the problem is this thing that they think is really important. I can't remember. It was like something trivial. And finally, I was like, have you ever been to New York? Did you stand downtown? No. You ever been east of the Rockies? They know nothing. So they're all looking at me like, well, what do you think? One of the partners asked me. I said, well, I'm really trying to buy time. I said, well, tell you what, I might have some questions after I read the business plan. So if you can send that to me, that'd be great. Now they're all looking at me like I just suggested we go outside and beat kittens to death. And someone says to me, this is the business plan. At this point, I exploded. I said, this is 6 pages of pictures from 2 kids who don't know anything about this market. Where's the competitive landscape? Where's the pro forma? Like what is this?
Yeah.
They'll look at me. Here's the kicker. They walked across the street to, I think it was Sequoia or Benchmark or one of them. It was one of those names, and got $5 million that afternoon. So the culture of the Valley, again, it's just an approach. I'm going to throw spaghetti at the wall.
Sure.
80% of venture funded companies that survive after 3 years have fundamentally changed the business model on which they were funded, right? So the Valley guys aren't stupid. They just take a different approach. On Wall Street, we look at the numbers, we do background checks, we check the competitive landscape, and in the Valley speak, we overthink it, right? So to them, the chances of investing in something stupid are outweighed by the chances of missing something that my competitor might get. So there's a logic to it. It's just different than East Coast financial evaluation.
Yeah.
But I never forget that because they all looked at me like I was insane, and they got the money. But I would never have suggested that you give these 2 kids $5 million. I just suggested the ecosystem. They weren't in charge of anything. The money didn't go to them. It sat in Silicon Valley Bank, and they got a draw on it until the VCs found out they were idiots. They threw them out the door. But it's a different approach. But if you take that approach to things, eventually you end up getting caught with your pants down, and a guy holding on. But anyway, final words of wisdom for those people who are thinking they're going to time the bottom and go crazy long Bitcoin today.
Well, money never grew on trees, and it certainly doesn't grow on trees in the Bahamas. So I just be safe out there. Stop stop letting other people hold on to your money. I think the sickest thing is that a lot of the crypto narrative is you can't trust the bank.
Right.
And so
I'm going to trust this clown.
Right. So let's repurpose that thought there and realize maybe don't trust anybody with your money. Right. And I don't know. Sometimes growth is hard, and I hope for anybody out there, it's just money. You can earn more of it too. So for anybody hurting, man, like stick it out. We're gonna make it.
Stick it out. You're luckily for you if you're a small player in this, you will be part of a class that's represented by very powerful attorneys who are going to shake every tree and get as much of it back as they possibly can. Now, it's not coming tomorrow, but there will be something coming back. And who knows, maybe Sam will enjoy the penal experience.
He may.
His girlfriend looks like she's all for it. So who knows? Anyway, Kurt, thank you so much for taking the time. Always enjoy. I have become more of a big blocker than I ever was 2 weeks ago, watching this debacle unfold. So anyway, thanks a lot to everyone else out there. Do not go buy any BTC based on what you heard here. Turn off the mainstream media. You know they're lying to you today after all this. And, be sure to tune in to Messy Times.
Learn what Bitcoin is, how it works, and why it matters. Bitcoin 101, your ultimate guide to the fundamentals of blockchain.